Welcome everyone to APTConnect Day 1. And this is our second session of the day, Troubleshooting Digital Appliances. We'll get started in just a few moments. A couple of tips in navigating your Zoom settings. If you escape from full screen view, you'll be able to see at the bottom of your screen a chat, a Q&A, and make sure you have those open because we'll be dropping some information in the chat. If you have any questions for Scott, whom we'll introduce very shortly, please put them in the Q&A. We hope you all are enjoying the session so far. We're off to a really great start. We're excited to bring you a lot of more great content throughout the rest of the morning. Don't forget to attend our next session at 11, winter maintenance. And then at noon, it'll be a little bit of a different format. We'll be in a meeting format so you all can see each other and interact. We'll have some breakout rooms as well. And there'll be lots of prizes and giveaways, so stick around. And yes, feel free to drop in the chat right now, giving us a good morning. Welcome. We're happy to have you here. We'll let a few more folks trickle in and we'll get started in just a few moments. Good morning, Keisha, George, Juan. Thank you all for joining us. Great to see you all engaging. Hi, Terry. Good morning, Danny. Morning, Dylan. And here we go. I'd like to introduce you today's sponsor, Brad Milne from HD Supply.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Troubleshooting Appliances. I am Brad Milne, the area manager for the HD Supply sales team, and my team covers Western Washington from Bellingham to Olympia. Here at HD Supply, we are dedicated to supplying you the products, the support, and the resources you need. I wanted to share with you a feature of our website to help you guys get the appliance parts that you need, and it is called Parts Link. This allows you to search by the model number and provides you the exploded view of the appliance so you can order the right part in order to complete your repair. Be sure to stop by our booth if you have any questions. Enjoy your session, and now I would like to introduce your speaker, Scott Wallace. He's the West Coast Product Service Trainer for GE Appliances. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, good morning, all. I would rather be in front of you than behind the camera right now, but that is just the life we live right now. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, let's get started. So I just want to let you know here on some warnings and stuff like that. Please be sure and make sure that you're using any grounding devices. If you have to take something off for any reason, please make sure and reconnect it, just for everybody's safety. This is for our guys only. We have to show this as part of our slides, but this is just for GE factory service. But we want you guys coming home, guys and gals, I shouldn't say just guys, anybody in this session here, please use any kind of PPE you can to be sure that you're safe. We want you to come back with all your limbs attached and, you know, go out the door and in the door the same as you came out. So please use your safety rated stuff. Okay, electric range. Let's get into electric range here. Mini manual is a very important part of the equation here. You want to be sure and be able to read a mini manual. If you don't know how to read a schematic or a mini manual, try and take some classes or courses on it and get familiar with them. There's a lot of great information in the mini manuals that I want you to go through and look at and read when you can, if it's available to you. Every product out there that we have should come with a mini manual attached onto it, but sometimes they get lost, sometimes they get taken, sometimes they get thrown away. Honestly, if there's a mini manual that came with the appliance and you have to look at it for any reason, please put it back so that anybody else coming in to check it will have that ability to look through the same info that you have. On the mini manuals themselves, you have a couple different breakdowns. On these, sometimes you have a ladder diagram that will show you the breakdown of how the components operate. So you've got your line 2, line 1, and obviously your components out here that it's going to make work. H1 and H2 on an electric range infinite switch is for your element itself. So these are the 2 points that are going to send power out to that element itself. Over here, you're going to have all your different, on here, you're going to have just L1 and neutral that's going to come into the board. On any electronic controls, you have to have an L1 and a neutral to be able to fire that component up. If you've got power between those 2 points, right here at L1 and right here at neutral, you should have a clock that lights up. If you've got that power there and your clock doesn't light up, you most likely have a bad control. So in the mini manuals themselves, there is a lot of information in there that covers as far as even how to take some of the components apart if need be. And there's different temperature limits that it'll tell you about in here, relays and such and how it works, and even the elements themselves. This is actually showing you the radiant heating element system, but it'll tell you where your thermal cutoffs and all that stuff is. We're like right over here. It tells you that information. It'll tell you how to get into special functions, to get into diagnostics on there. If you had a code that came up and you want to know what that code's all about, you'd be able to open that up, get into special functions and find out what the code is and read up on it to see what actually is going on. It's very useful to have these mini manuals. So if you ever get stumped on something, try and go find it. If you have to go on the internet to do it, I know that Sloan was actually going to put some information out there at the end. I do believe that you're going to be able to go to for the GE website and actually be able to download any information that you can't find by model number or such, and be able to go out and get a mini manual. So on the mini manuals themselves, like I said, it'll show you down here, like over here, if you're in a bake cycle, on this, it's showing you the 2 relays that are going to be on throughout the cycle. Is going to be your bake relay and your broil relay. Now, they're not going to be both on at the same time. They're going to, alternate between the 2, but that's what's going to create your heat for your elements to bring this thing up to temperature. And they do alternate. So you might hear clicking in the relays, which is very normal. And explain to the customer that's normal. It's cycling up. On bake and broil, you're talking about 75% of the time that bake element's going to be on, and about 25% of the time the broil is going to come on, just to maintain the heat inside the oven and help it to, get to the proper temperatures quicker. So we do use both elements, but we don't have them on at both same time because otherwise it'd draw too much power. So they will alternate, but it shows you on the chart what respective relays will be on. Installation. I like to go over installation on these just to be sure that everybody stays safe. On here, you want to be sure if you've got a 3-wire connection, like a lot of the older apartments and a lot of older homes are going to have 3-wire connections in them. So you'll have an L1 and an L2 and a neutral or ground, which you should have corresponding voltages on. L1 to neutral should be 120 volts. Your L2 to neutral should be 120 volts respectively. And then your L1 to L2 should be 240 volts or 208, depending on what your business is set up for. There's some apartments that only have 208. So you're going to get different values to that L1 and L2 than the 120. But on a 240 volt system, those would be your voltages. So on a 3-wire connector, you should have, and you want to have the grounding strap on there, because the grounding strap is there to protect the individuals that are used in the oven. If that grounding strap wasn't on there and somebody actually happened to touch a component, or the side of the oven, anything on there that's metal, and something had shorted out, they're going to get a shock. So that's the reason why the grounding strap is on there, so that it grounds out that whole unit, so that if anything happens, it takes care of that, and it hopefully will trip the breaker out before it hurts any individuals out there. So that's why it's very important at the beginning where we said, put your grounding stuff on there, make sure it's grounded out. That's the reason why. On a 3-wire system, you definitely have to have that ground strap on there. On a 240 volt, 208 4-wire outlet, you're going to have a different setup on these. So you're going to have a ground, which is going to be the top, half moon plug. You'll have an L1 hot on one side and an L2 hot on the other side, and then you're going to have a neutral. So at this point, you're going to have 4 different wires that come in. Most of your new installations are going to be set up like this. So They're set up with a 4-wire on most of the new stuff now, probably in the last 4 or 5 years at least. So most of the new stuff is all going to be wired 4-wire. And at that point, you won't need that grounding strap on the back. And I'll explain it here in a second. So on there, you want to take that grounding strap off to be able to hook up, because your red line is going to go to your L1, your white line is going to go to your neutral, and your black line is going to go to your L2, or excuse me, L1. And then your ground strap is going to be removed, and you're going to put the ground wire, which would be green, onto that grounding strap placement. So that piece would get removed. Any tips? Any tips are one thing that are very important. If you look at the picture up there on the upper left-hand corner, that's basically showing a child that's going to climb on a door. And those doors, if the anti-tip isn't installed, those doors would have just enough to create a fulcrum that whole oven itself would tip over and on top of the individual itself. If it didn't hurt them bad, it would, it would certainly make a mess. So we don't want anybody getting hurt or even possibly killed. And if you had a really heavy turkey or something like that was out on there, you open up, pull the rack out, it's a very good likelihood that whole thing is going to tip. So the anti-tips are very important to have on there. So that's why I like to stress on these, that make sure that you're using them. The anti-tips are very, very important to have. And I'll get to the next one here. If you can't find one, or you're looking for one, but you can't find it, there's a part number right there for you. Like I said, any of these part numbers that will be on this presentation, this is being recorded. So you'll be able to, at any point in time, go back in and look at this and get a part number if need be. But I have to stress, more than anything, safety devices are really there for, for your protection, so that somebody else doesn't get hurt on your watch. That's the reason why we've got the stuff out there for it, to make sure that people stay safe. Okay, kids are kids; they're going to climb. Leveling the range. You want to make sure that the range is level. I've got plenty of complaints out in the field of, my pie's not cooking right, or my cake is all to one side. Well, that's usually in an unlevel range. Every range we have out there, it has leveling legs on it. Please do not remove the leveling legs. They are there for 2 reasons. One, to level the range, and the other is to make sure that your anti-tip device is held in place, or your oven is held in place by the anti-tip. Aluminum foil and oven liners, never a good mix. So if you have aluminum foil, and customers that, there's many customers out there that just absolutely don't want anything to spill over in their ovens. They want to keep it clean and pristine. That's fine. If you need to use aluminum foil, or if they need to use aluminum foil, please put the aluminum foil underneath what you're cooking or on the rack below what you're cooking. Do not cover the complete rack, because you'll starve the heat from getting up around the food. So just cover what you need to with the food itself to keep it from spilling over and getting down on the bottom and creating a mess. Yes, it's okay to use aluminum foil on that respect, but don't put it on the the burners themselves. Don't put it in there, because it's a potential shock hazard too, especially if it's up here on the elements and they haven't removed all the aluminum foil. The problem is, when you're taking these elements in and out, if there's aluminum foil goes across there, it's going to short it out, and it's going to arc it and spark it and make it, obviously die before it's supposed to. Plus, on coil style burners like we have on some of these ones that a lot of apartment complexes have, the coil style burners on the back right burner, that's a vent hole there. So if they take the drip pan out and they put foil around that drip pan and forget to knock that hole out, guess what? You've just blocked that whole hole, and the oven itself, when it comes on, can't breathe. So you're going to get improper cooking. So that's one thing to be aware of when you're looking at that. If somebody's got aluminum foil on those burners, make sure, and you've got a complaint of an oven not cooking proper, make sure that the hole back there on that right burner is opened up and you've got heat coming up from the vent itself. All right, surface units. Test equipment is really, really important. I gotta say that the best friend in your whole toolbox is probably your meter. So get a good quality meter. It doesn't have to be $100, $200, $300 meter. I mean, a $50 meter is just fine. This is the X-Tech meter most of us use out in the field. They're a great, versatile little meter. I provided part numbers down there for them, along with the needle probes and or the tip itself. It should come with a temperature probe along with it also that you'll be able to use. But the temperature probe is also used to be able to test oven temperatures. If somebody complains about, the oven not cooking proper. So get a good versatile meter. I mean, this little one here, you only have to carry one in your box. I mean, you don't have to have 14 different meters or, go searching for another meter. If you've got this one, they're very small, compact, and they do about everything you need it to do. So it's very versatile. I recommend it highly, but that's entirely up to you what you want to use. All right, surface plug-in elements. If you look at this element here, you see that little disc in the middle. We'll get into that a little bit further on into the presentation, but this is the SensiTemp style burner. This is the newest one that's out there now since 2018. We have to have them that can actually sense the temperature of the burner so we don't have runaways. Used to have a lot of coil style, fires that happened because people would boil water and boil the water out of it. And the pan would actually fuse itself, literally get so hot enough, it would fuse itself or melt down into the burner itself and create a fire. So that's what they are now. And that's by design, they have to be there. So you want to be sure on any units that you've got a good receptacle that plugs in and the element itself has clean and undamaged, terminals going into that receptacle. So visually inspect the receptacle for the following defects and make sure if any of these happen, that if it's a cracked block, please replace the receptacle and look at the element itself. Melted block, definitely replace. Internal arcing, carbon buildup around the terminals. I would say most times you can get around probably cleaning the terminals on the element itself, but I would recommend highly putting a new receptacle in because once you start arcing, it's very, very hard to get in there and clean it without, creating more damage and opening it up more. Burnt or charred wires, definitely replace that receptacle. And then loose connectors, if you can't make it connect better, I would definitely say just time to get in a whole new receptacle. They're cheap, they're not bad to change, but you'll save yourself a lot of headaches if you just go ahead and change the part. So the elements themselves, to be able to test the element, you got 2 points on here you're going to look at, just on the outsides. On most elements, 8-inch, you're going to get about 22 ohms out of it. And on a 6-inch element, you should have about 37 ohms out of it, respectively. So test your elements. If they test good, then you're obviously, it's not a problem with your element. Elements are only the only thing in the equation. It's there to serve as heat. That is it. So if you're getting issues with not cooking properly, it could be your cookware, or it could be the infinite switch itself that's acting up. That little surface inside here, like I said on that silver piece, this little button right here, that's actually spring loaded. It's going to pop up and down to be able to, connect with the bottom of the pan to sense the temperature. So they've got a pretty high temperature range on them that they're not going to cycle off, as quickly as people think. But flat cookware is going to make a difference. So starting in 2018, UL regulations require that all of our cooktop ranges have temperature limiting capabilities to reduce the risk of a cooktop fire with open elements like this. As a result, GE appliances and every other manufacturer out there has to have some type of SensiTemp technology. These are, the ones with the silver medallion in the middle, and they do have a spring-loaded coil. So the bottom must contact the cookware properly to sense it. So if you've got a caved-in pan or a concave pan where the middle of it is way up and bowed up, it's probably not going to work properly, and you're not going to get good, even cooking out of it because the cookware is the issue. Believe me, I've seen it plenty of times. So when the sensor detects the pan temperature near the limit, it's going to cycle that burner off. This will not affect everyday cooking as the automatic shutoff is temporary and only happens at very high temperatures. So during the temporary automatic shutoff, the burner will cycle on bright red and then off dark to maintain safe cooking temperatures. When cycling off, the burner retains enough heat to continue the cooking, and the burner will cycle back on automatically and continue cooking or continue during the cooking time. If the coil burner does not seem to be working properly, check the following. Ensure that it's clean. Make sure there's no debris that's keeping it from popping up to go back up to, and spillovers happen. We know it. It's all everyday life. Soup foil or food soil can obstruct the sensor, and you just clean the condenser or clean the coil up with, any food on there with a damp soapy rag. Make sure that you're unplugged, obviously. Ensure that the cookware's flat. You can make sure it's flat with just a ruler or anything like that to check the gauge and the flatness of the bottom. You can put it on a counter. If it wobbles, there's a good likelihood that it's probably not going to heat proper. So, but you could take a ruler or straight edge of something and put it on that pan and run it from edge to edge, and make sure it's not got a big old bow in the middle. If it does, and it's too huge, it's not going to contact properly, and it will cycle off because it's going to create a heat pocket underneath that, right at that point, and cycle that element off too quickly. So ensure the coil works. Just make sure it pops up and down. Test receptacle by removing the working or non-working coil from its receptacle and insert it into another one if you have the same size. Generally, on most of our ovens, you're going to get 2 8-inch coils and you're going to get 2 6-inch coils. So if the front one's not working, which most people use the front burners, try and grab one from the back, pop it in there and see if it works. If it does, at that point, you're testing the coil to make sure, it's going to work proper. And your cookware, I'm not going to go over this real heavy. I think I've already pretty much covered it, but just make sure that, everything's flat. It's showing you in the left-hand side there, the do's and the don'ts. So types of cookware that you can have problems with are the ones like it's stating, especially the one in the middle where you've got a bowed bottom. If that's the case, it's not going to work proper because that doesn't contact that surface of that pan and it will cycle off too quickly. Here's your temperature ranges that you're going to get to. And just bear in mind, folks, the water boils at most every area at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So you've got an element that cycles off on the 6-inch coil at 482 degrees and then closes back at 464, and an 8-inch that closes at 455 and closes again at 437. It's a pretty high range there that people are looking at. So, if you got somebody that says, hey, my stuff's not boiling, take a look at the pans, because there's a very good likelihood they probably don't have proper pans or pans that are going to work proper for these particular coil burners. And I gotta stress that this technology is forward compatible with everything and backward compatible with everything, but you cannot take one of the old coils off of any of the ranges and swap them. It's not recommended, and you will actually void the GE warranty on there if you do, because you've changed the design of the unit. This is all about safety. So do not be that guy or gal that, says, hey, I'm just going to get you by, because you know what happens? Murphy's Law. Somebody's going to get hurt. Something's going to happen. And you're going to stand there and go, well, I didn't listen to the GE guide. But please don't do that. Get another burner if you need to. I know it's an inconvenience, but please be safe. So all the models before 2018, as I stated earlier, are going to be compatible backwards with this burner. So this burner will fit in any of the older ones too. If you wanted to, change out some of them to be more safe in the areas that you respectively work in, you just cannot, you cannot change them back to the old style. It's never recommended. So any questions you have on here, please put them in the chat. I'd be happy to discuss anything at the end. With that said, on to the next. So top freezer refrigerators. In January of 2020, GE Appliances began using R600A as the refrigerant in all of our top freezer models. Things you need to be aware of is let me state this. The new isobutane refrigerant that is R600 is flammable. It's such a small quantity that it's very unlikely that anything is going to happen, but we want, we still want people to be safe. So best thing to do on these ones is look at your model serial number tag. It should have on the nomenclature what type of refrigerant is in that unit. Anything R134 is going to be older units. Anything R12 is going to be a really old unit. But if it has 600A on there, please remember that any component that you get for this refrigerator, say you got a light switch that goes out, it has to be the corresponding part to that particular model. Do not, just because of a switch looks like it's going to work, doesn't mean it's the same. These have to be intrinsically safe because they can't cast a spark. Just for the mere fact that it is a flammable refrigerant, we've had to change everything around to make sure that nothing in there can actually cast the spark and create a problem as far as if there was ever a leak in the system. And I'm talking very small amount of refrigerant. Most of your old units in R134s and R12s had anywhere from 10 to 12 ounces to like 4 to 5 ounces in 134 systems. These have grams. I mean, literally grams. There's 128 grams to make up 1 ounce. So it's a small amount of refrigerant, but it still does the same, same job. And everybody's going to it. It's mandated now for, nationwide use. So we're not the only manufacturers that are using it. They've actually been using it in Europe for quite a while. So as I stated, just want to make you aware that they are out there. So please look at your nomenclature on them. Excuse me. Again, on here, I'm showing you right here. This is actually your defrost components that are inside the freezer on an R600 unit. It comes as an assembly. You cannot cut and splice in any of these units. We don't want you to, because of the fact that, it could cast a spark on something. These are going to be 120 volt units. So they're set up with, components in there that would, if they should fail, they're going to open up. But enough being said about 600. We'll get into the electromechanical defrost control. I want to touch on these because we get so many calls into our tag team about these older appliances, and guys still don't know easy ways to diagnose them. So I want to show some tips and tricks on some of the older stuff too. The new stuff is pretty much a lot the same as the old stuff, wiring wise and everything else. Other controls, other than that. I know a lot of these, you guys are probably going to see some that have hookups to some of this stuff. We can actually hook computers into some of these and test them, but not all of them. So this would be a typical frost pattern on a normal evaporator. This is what you'd like to see. So you see this means your compressor and everything is probably working fine. And you got something else that's happening in the system. You see this? This is not so good. This means that you've got a problem in your defrost system somewhere along the way. It's a component that's failed. So if you run into this, what do? There are 4 possibilities. Number 1 possibility is probably going to be your defrost timer. That defrost timer controls your run and your defrost. So you can actually turn this, and you'll hear an audible click when you turn it with a flat blade screwdriver. There's a cam on the bottom side of it that you'd be able to turn when it's in the compartment itself, and you'd hear it click. If at that point it goes into a defrost, then it's just a bad timer. But if you wanted to test those components, you could actually, I'm just showing you the location of the control itself, where it's at inside the console. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen this console. So right here, this is your cold control. This is what sends power in. If you've got a frosted up evaporator, that cold control is working just fine. It's something else. So number 1 culprit most likely is probably this defrost control. Number 2 would be your defrost heater. It's an electromechanical defrost heater. So it is, most of ours are in the older style ones, are going to be a glass tube heater. So, but if your evaporator is that frosted up, you're not going to get to them. So we conveniently put 2 checkpoints on the very back of this refrigerator in the cabinet itself in the wiring. So there's a connector, a 6-pin connector on the very back side you could take apart. And number 5 to number 6 pins, which would be your blue and your pink, you would have the ability to test that heater. and you'd have about 35 ohms roughly on a good heater if it was working, and wasn't open. If you had no continuity between there, you've got probably a bad defrost heater. So you can also test more components than that. You could test from the blue wire all the way to the orange wire, and you could check on that and be able to run through the whole system as far as the defrost thermostat's even concerned. If you've got continuity between the blue to the orange, you're going to have everything in that upper part of that freezer that's working proper. And so you can basically say that the timer's bad. But you can test just that, if you want to go to the number 5, which is the pink, or excuse me, number 6, which is the pink, and go to the yellow, you're going to have the ability to test just that component and see if that's bad. So if you tested your heater and it reads good, but you still don't have continuity going through the orange, you could test from that pink wire to the orange wire. And at that point, you know that your defrost thermostat is open. So defrost thermostats are rated with specifics towards the temperature limits. They're actually put on our mini manuals too. So you'll know by looking at a mini manual what the temperature range for that limit should be. Most of them are going to look like this, and they will have a value on the side. If you look at this here, this is actually a mathematical equation. So L64 means 64 degrees. This thing is going to open up at. So it's going to take 41 degrees before it closes. So this is your differential number. So 64 minus 41 equals 23. So at 23 degrees, this is where it's going to cycle closed again, and you'd be ready for your next defrost cycle. So most of our defrost timers are set up on, a lot of them are probably 8-hour timers, and that is set up through, it's what we call accumulated runtime. So it's going to take 8 hours plus for this thing to cycle off and go into a defrost. So the first 15 minutes is probably going to be in a defrost, and you're going to have 15 minutes of the heater being on until it hits that 23 degree mark, or excuse me, that 64 degree mark, and cycles off. And it's going to take 41 degrees of cooling back down before it gets to 23 and cycles back on, which means you're back into a run cycle at that point. So you can see there, that's straight off of the mini manual itself. It tells you what the defrost thermostat is. It's a 64-23. So the defrost wiring harness is probably the last thing in there that could even fail. And honestly, I don't see them ever fail. It's just wiring. It's very, very hard to have it, go bad. It's just, it hooks into the components. So it's never one that I've really, in 25 years, run into, but maybe 1 or 2 that ever had an open wire through the system that I couldn't fix. So remember that 6-pin connector we were talking about in the backside? This is down in the compartment, right to about the left of the condenser itself, tucked back in the wiring, but it's 6 pins. If you look over here, you can see what I'm talking about as far as, the 6, the 5, and the 4. These are all the 3 that you're going to really be, more concerned with as far as testing components, because your number 6 is going to be your pink wire. Your number 5 is going to be your blue wire. And your number 4 is your orange wire. So all these corresponding ones, you'd be able to test. 5 and 6, you're testing your heater itself. So you're just testing this circuit only. And like I said, if you wanted to go, you test that and it reads good, but you're still not getting continuity from 6 to 4, then you could test physically just your thermostat itself by going to number 5 and to the orange wire, which would be number 4. If you've got no continuity between there, you know that this is either open or you got an open wire. More of likelihood that you probably have an open thermostat than you do an open wire. So at that point, I'd probably go for, the new component versus wiring to be, doubly insured that it's fixing the problem. But worst case, you could always, for just testing purposes, jump the wires out for that thermostat. And if you jump them out and you get continuity across, you know that your element is good and you got a bad thermostat. Do not leave it that way, please. You don't want to take any safety component out of place. So that's only for testing purposes that I would ever recommend it. So let's get into the electronic control dishwasher. I know I'm going kind of fast here, guys, and I'm sorry if if I'm talking too fast, but we've only got 45 minutes, and I want to be able to spend a little bit of time, if we can, going over any questions or answers if they arise. So door switch diagnosis, there's two ways this can be accomplished. You can go into error code mode, which basically is going to be your cycle select switch and your start switch. You would hold those for 5 seconds, and it will give you the ability to test the door. So the door check LED status will last for 10 seconds. So you've got 10 seconds to do this test. If all the LEDs are solid on your door on these electronic models, that means that your door is closed. If you open the door just to test it, it should go to flashing. So your LEDs on the front, or your buttons on the front, or your indicators on the front should start flashing to tell you that your door is open. You close your door again and they go solid, your door switch is working and you've got something else that's going on. But from the main control, if you needed to check the resistance of that, wiring all the way up to that switch, you can do it at the J711 pin 3 to J711 pin 4 and pin 5. Now your J711 pin 3 is going to be your tan with a red, and that is actually going to be your common between the two door switches. You can see here, you've got your separated pins here, but this is all one connector here. You got your pin 2, which is one side of that door switch, and you got your pin 3, which is the other side of that door switch. If either one of those is open, and you can test them all, your white with the silver to your tan with the red, and your violet with the yellow to your tan with your red. If you've got continuity with the door closed, you got a good door switch. If you've got no continuity, like between the white with a silver trace on it to the tan red, and your door is closed, you've got an open door switch. So you can test them at that point also. This is what your door switch and strike would look like in an exploded view and basically opened up. So this is all kind of spring loaded, but your door switches are going to be out here roughly. So these come back and they push in on a micro, and I mean they're a micro switch. So they engage these door switches, and that's what tells that the door is physically closed. The strikes on these, you can see here, has kind of a diamond shape to it. That's by design. It wants to make sure and ensure that door is held closed. And there's obviously springs up inside these pieces here that keep these tabs tight, so it hopefully ensures that the door stays closed. Switches are 13.5 volt DC, and you would need the needle leads on these wires to test them at both the switch itself, which the switch would plug in up here. You can see the 3 connections, but they are for the micro leads only. They are very tiny. So if you don't have the micro leads, buy yourself a pair to be able to test these. It'll be your best friend, because otherwise you're going to be, you're going to be having an issue trying to get them connected. Switches are activated or deactivate the relays on the main board. So use error code mode to check the operation. That's the first easiest step. And we just explained that earlier. So that's what I would do on any of them that I went into, try that first before you start going digging into the main board down the bottom. Mini manuals, again, have a lot of information on them that are very useful. It explains a lot of things on how to get some components out and apart, and explains operation. It also gives you the instructions on how to get these into service mode if you need to. So if you don't have the mini manual for a unit, if you go to the website and put the model number in and look for information on there for the, most times it's going to come under support. And they'll give you the model number, serial number to be able to put in there. And you just want to go in and find the mini manual if you can, and or even the use and care book for the customer if need be. Mini manuals, again, like I said, have all the diagnostic features, test modes, and everything else in them. So if you've got LEDs that are blinking on the front of here, you could always go and look at that and see on the mini manual itself what that corresponding code's all about. And you got a breakdown of the diagrams on these down here. One thing I kind of want to remind people of, and let me do this. Let me see if I can blow this thing up. I'm going to zoom in here. And if you look here on the board itself, it shows right here, personality jumpers. On these personality jumpers, you may have to go in and change those. It will give you those corresponding jumpers for that particular, this is just generically pulled up as a model number GDT 570. So it's going to tell you the personality on here and what it should be. It says it's not required. So, but if it did have any requirement, this is 8, 4, a 2, and a 1. You may see that on a board, and that's what your jumpers, that's where your personality is set at. So if it asks you to set it at, you know, at like a 12, that means that you would leave the 8 on, you leave the 4 on, and you remove the 2 and the 1. And you don't have to remove them off completely. Just shift them off to, you know, either the right side or the left side. They're just over 2 pins. So if you had to change personality, that is where you would do it. So it will be on the board if it's not already pre-programmed at the factory. Most times if you get a new board in, it's going to give you the ability to go ahead and change the jumper, you know, configuration. Don't ever throw the old board away or take the old board until you've got ready for the new board, because I have seen it happen where they come out with no jumpers on them at all. And when you need the jumpers, you're gonna be looking for them and you don't have them. So just don't throw that old board away. They may have the jumpers on it, and you may be able to swap them from one board to another if you're using the you know, the codes down here to look at what personality should be set at. So this basically, all these numbers make up 15. So you've only got certain combinations you can get to make it to 15 personality anyhow. So you could have it at 0, or you could have it all the way up to 15. And that is pretty much the end of my presentation. So I'm just going to go into the diagnostics part of it here real quick, just to show you in service mode what you can get to. But this here is when you go into service mode, you'll actually have blinks on that front board that you'll see on the, it's usually in the normal button or the start button that you're going to see it. But this tells you how to get into service mode and how to make this thing, you know, basically do anything you want it to do. You get into test number 1, you'd be actively operating the drain pump. So what you'll do is you'll get it in there by following this down here. You're going to go in here, you know, the cycle select pad only after you've got it out of error mode for 5 seconds is going to put you into this mode here for service mode, where you can go in and test components. So number 1 test would test your drain. It's going to run that thing for about, you know, 75 seconds at a normal level to be able to drain the water out that's in the pump, you know, if there's any water left inside there. Number 2 test, what you would do is you would, you know, obviously stop the test, open the door, hit the cycle select button, hit the start button, close it. You should have 2 blinks coming on there. And then you hit the start button and it should activate the next cycle. So you turn on your water valve. That will run for approximately a minute and fill up the tub with normal amount of water. So you'd be able to test the level of the tub itself by using this test also. The number 3 test is going to be for your circulation pump. So it changes the spray arm, you know, between the two. On our dishwashers, because we use such a small amount of water, which is 0.86 gallons per fill, you can't run both spray arms at each time, or at both at the same time, because it will starve it from water. So we cycle between the upper spray arm and the lower spray arm for a maximum of, you know, generally 2 minutes. So it's going to run these both just to see if you've got it. There is a part number for our clear door too that you can use to test and diagnose these products. If anybody ever wants to or needs to get that part number for that clear door, it only works on the ones that are set up with the, you know, particular strike that are electronic models for our, you know, our units, but it will cover every electronic model out there, even up to the highest dollar stuff. So it's a great diagnostics tool because you can put it in there and see how the arms are spraying, see if it's, you know, customers complaining about not going around. You can use that, but you can put these in the diagnostics by using the service mode itself to put them in to be able to test components, any of them. If you've got a no heat situation, you can be to test number 4. You don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. If you actually just push that sense button, it will actually change it between cycles. so that you can, you can switch it to number 4 by just hitting the auto button on there, and you'll be able to cycle it through, excuse me, the cycle select button, and you'd be able to cycle it to the test number 4, turn on the heater. And to turn on the heater, you can test it. It's going to run for 2 minutes. So you'd be able to, reach inside there, feel if there's any heat. If there is, you're in good shape. And then the diagnostics, it's going to show you blinking lights. There is actually a LED on the service board down here that you can see. I can blow this up a little bit so that you can see a little bit better. But right in here, when this is working and on, you should see that light blinking. And if you've got an error code, it's going to blink whatever corresponding numbers are for that error itself. So if you look at that main board on the bottom and it's blinking a certain amount of times, you've got a problem with the unit. So say you get, you open this up and you see 6 times in, per every 3 seconds. It's in demo mode. Somebody has accidentally put this thing into demo mode, and it's going to tell you here, right, which buttons to hold to get it back out of demo mode, which would be your hold, start, and your heated dry for approximately 5 seconds. That should take you in or out of demo mode. But it does happen. I've seen them, plenty of them, the people didn't realize that they'd hit, their kids got playing with the buttons and, they hit, and, it won't work. I mean, in demo mode, it looks like it's lighting up. It looks like it's doing everything, but it's not. So if you went to that main board and you saw that light that was flashing, 6 times, you would be in demo mode. And then, any others that are on there, unit has completed a cycle, you'd be, flashing 5 times. So it's just, it's diagnostics that we put in there. That's why I say mini manuals are very important to try and, be able to read and keep on the units themselves. Don't throw them away. Don't take them with you. Don't throw them in your toolbox. If you got to look at it, but, put it back. Okay. Any questions out there? Because I am done.
Thank you, Scott. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and start with Kenneth's question. Is an older property required to upgrade to the size of temp to be in compliance?
Are they required to move up to the sensitive temp burners? No. We just leave them out there as an option if they want to, because it's all UL listings from anything from 2018 on up. So no, they don't have to. I mean, if they want to go out and buy the burners, they can, and they will work in the older units in 90% of the applications. But it's not required or recommended. I think the old ones are grandfathered in, but it's for safety respects. That's why they've gone to this, is because they want everything to be safe. So how it gets with safety and compliance. We've got to follow the band. So to answer your question, no, you don't have to be up to code or anything like that. But if you want to, they are available to purchase to change them out.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for the question, Kenneth. Sorry, I have a follow-up question coming in the chat from Damien. How old would an appliance be considered too old?
I would say most appliances, if you're getting anywhere near 10 to 12 years old, there's a good distinct possibility we're going to start running out of manufactured parts for them, because we only manufacture and hold parts in our parts departments for generally up to about 15 years max. Then they start to kind of fade off, unless it's something that's been used quite regularly. But the thing is, at that point, they get to a point where they've outlived their useful life, so to speak, and you're going to be running into more problems with them. So it's about 10 to 12 years on average.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question from Juan. Is it safe to remove ice with a heat gun?
On anything that's not our 600, because our 600, the only thing we've been told on those that we could even recommend would be the steamers, because you're not in a direct heat source. But heat guns get up to, 800 degrees if you've got them on high. So at that point, I I always used a pump sprayer when I was out in the field. That was me. I'd always carry quite a few towels along with a wet dry vac, and I'd spray them down. It was faster than a heat gun. And the mere problem with the heat gun is if you get anywhere near any of the plastic on these, you're going to melt it down. So because they got so hot, they do work great for taking care of ice and such, but so does the pump sprayer. As long as you've unplugged this thing from the wall, you've got nothing that's going to conduct electricity, and you can get them cleaned up pretty fast, just with a pump sprayer and a wet dry vac.
Thank you. The last question is from Kyle. Do we need to upgrade older surface elements to meet the new 2018 compliance?
Negative. The older ones, you can do it. Like I said earlier, you can do it if you want to. I believe there's a grandfathered law though that's going to be okay for the older units to stay just the way they are. Thing is, anything that was purchased after 2018 will have the SensiTemp burners on them. So that's the one thing that they wanted me to touch on pretty good, because a lot of guys don't understand those burners and how they operate. So no, they do not have to be upgraded on the older units, but you can make them safer by ordering them and putting them in if you want.
Yeah, Christopher pointed out that he actually had a fire in his building because a resident fell asleep while cooking.
It happens.
And had they had the SensiTemp burners, it could have been avoided. So
exactly. So no, I mean, I'm sure if you wanted to go and buy a bulk of them to make everything safe, we'd happily sell them to you. But talk to your salespeople, talk to Brad. They may be able to kind of work out some kind of deal if you wanted to do your whole property. I can't speak on that one because that's out of my wheelhouse. But if you wanted to be safe, yes, they are probably adaptable to anything that you've got out there as far as the controls are concerned.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. Thanks to Brad for sponsoring this session. And remember, you can visit HD Supply if you want pricing on any of those in our marketplace. We have a short break before we have our next session about winterization. And
if anybody has any further questions, they could always direct them to Sloan. She can email them to me, and I'd be happy to email them back if need be. But again, we're here to help you guys as much as we can. And I wish I could be right there in front of you, with the products and everything else to be able to show you more. I mean, I'm a visual, so I like to visualize and take stuff apart to be able to know how it operates. So I wish we had a different format we were in, but this is the best we got for now. So any other questions, direct them at Sloan or whoever, and I would be happy to get them back to you.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Brad. And
thanks for the invite, guys.
Great to have you. We'll have the slides up in the APTConnect platform for this session. Check it out momentarily.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.